Okay. Well, Batman's ready. Batman's always ready. Okay, good evening and welcome to our work session. Would you please rise and join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I think, Kim, you're set with the roll call.
Yes, I am, thank you.
Okay, and we have some esteemed presenters tonight. I'm told experienced, superb. I think I'll reject the word weathered, right? We don't need to use that. But we'll turn it over to our presenters at this time. We'll turn it over to Joe.
We're going to start with our elementary strategic action plan presentations, utilizing the success planning guide that we did with our secondary administrators. And we're going to start, we'll just go through goal by goal, similar to what we did with our secondary folks. And Melissa is going to start us off with the first goal for Reynolds.
Thank you. So our first goal is to create an environment where all students, staff, and families feel a sense of belonging. And that's always our first priority in elementary school, is making sure that our students feel they're a part in our building, the Reynolds community, and also do students feel like they belong. And at the end of this week, we'll actually have the opportunity to work with the RMS. We're going to be working with a thought exchange. And the thought exchange, we're going to be putting together a survey, working with a coach, and there's 3 more elementary buildings that are going to work on that. So we can survey our students to see how they feel at Reynolds. We figured instead of waiting to survey the students, we would begin by kicking off the year, doing a school-wide project. It was called The Best Part of Me. We did the project pre-K-5, and it was where students listened to a school-wide reading on the morning announcements, and they listened to a book where they highlighted different parts of children. It went from the brain, the heart, or maybe their attributes you see outside, like your lips, your eyes. So several students then had the opportunity to develop the part that they thought was the best part of them. And what they did, depending on the age level, pre-K through 5, some took a picture, because pre-K clearly the teacher took a picture, and then they highlighted what was their favorite part, and the teacher wrote a sentence. In 5th grade, some of them wrote poems highlighting the best part of themselves. To take it a step further, what we did was we had teachers pair up across grade levels and look at what other students did across the grade levels and see if they could find a match. Was there someone that their favorite part was their brain? Why was it the best part of them? What did they have in common? And then the students put together a slideshow that they were able to share across the school. Also, we have a silent mentoring program that we found to be very successful. It's really at minimum a check-in and check-out. So if there's students that just need that little extra support in the morning on their way into school, someone goes down and checks in with them, and they start to notice that it's the same adult every day, just checking in. Hey, do you want to go for a walk? Or how was your morning? And then throughout the day, if they need a break, they need a walk, the teacher will call down and say, you know what, so-and-so needs a break or a walk or just to talk, to check in. They're kind of having a rough time, or their day's going great, but they need a motor break. And we'll go down and we'll check in with them. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like a checkout. How was your day? What was your favorite part of the day? What do you hope to do tomorrow in school? And it's really just to keep students understanding that they're important to us and that they make those connections at school. And it might not be another student, but it can be an adult, a trusted adult at school. And we've found this to be so successful that last year when we started it, we have some adults that worked with students last year that actually asked to work with those students again, because they have that relationship, they've already formed it, they feel comfortable, and it's showing that they're doing better in school, and they know they have that adult that they can talk to besides the teacher, the person that they see every day.
Hi, my name is Mindy Howard. I'm the principal at McNamara. And when thinking about this goal, one of the first things I did at the start of this year was to form a DEI committee that has representation from all the different grade levels and teams in the school, because I just needed their experience with this school since I was new to the building. So one of the things that we did right away was look at the equity dashboard on our school report card on the website. And so one of the things that we noticed when looking at that report card was our attendance data. So if we look at our population at McNamara, about 31% of our students experience poverty, and we notice a disproportionality with our students who are chronically absent. So while we only have 31% of students that are that experience poverty, 56% of our students that are chronically absent experience poverty. So that disproportionality was concerning to us as a committee. So we started to put together some action steps that we could take to address that pretty specific data point, knowing that those actions would also, spill over and support students in general. So one of the first things we did as our student support team, which includes our psychologist, social worker, and counselor, we created an attendance tracking tool. And so we use this tool to track our steps that we take with families when we're noticing students popping up at that 10% point that they're missing about 10% of school days. So we started tracking our students and tracking the steps that we're taking. And we've reviewed this tool with the DEI committee as well. But then within the larger DEI committee, we're starting to really dig into the culturally responsive sustaining education framework, specifically the creating a welcoming and affirming environment section, so that we can identify some areas that, of things that we can do across the school building that will improve our environment, which can be also an impact on attendance. In addition to that, we're creating some pretty specific action plans for our students who are chronically absent and who experience poverty, to just try to put some plans and structures in place to support their attendance. That sometimes spills over into home a little bit too, and what we can do to support families at home.
Hi, I'm Cindy Cronin, principal of Van Buren Elementary. When we think about DEI at Van Buren, this is the third year of our DEI leadership team. What we are trying to accomplish at Van Buren is considering the opportunities, that concept of mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. So our students feeling that their experiences, the resources, the environment is that reflective of who they are, but also is our school environment giving students the opportunity to see beyond their own personal experiences and to explore the wider world around them. So they're looking through that window into something they may not have experienced. And then the sliding glass door, of course, is that they can cross that, what seems to be a barrier, and make a connection with folks that are maybe not just like them, but that they'll understand and learn that they have more in common than they have differences. And so that's our approach at Van Buren when we think of making a welcoming school environment. We are in the process, it closes tomorrow. We are also doing a thought exchange, a school belonging survey for students grades 2 through 5, which is about 358 students. And we're asking them questions about how they feel connected to school. One of the questions is, who do you have a trusted adult at school that you can talk to? We get through the thought exchange, if there's an identifiable piece of information like someone's name, it'll pop up and it'll send me an email asking if I approve or disapprove of the comment, because it's potentially identifying. And I'm so happy to see the students are identifying their teachers, teachers that they've had years ago that they still know and trust, folks that they're working with currently, whether it's RTI or support, other support teams, our counselor and our social worker are, their names come up a lot in the student responses. I can talk to those people about difficult things, are one of the comments that I've seen. So I'm really looking forward to digging into that data once it's available, so that we can see where the action steps are, but also being able to convey to staff, you know, you're doing the heavy lift, you're doing the hard work and the sensitive work. We're also engaging in cultural assemblies throughout the year. So our first cultural assembly, we had Perry Brown, who is a member of the Turtle Clan. He talked about the Haudenosaunee and how the clans came together because they were stronger. He used an arrow, one arrow to show that one single arrow by itself can break, but when we're all together, we're stronger together, and we put a group of arrows together. So he talked to grades pre-K through 3 about that, and talked about the evolution of their relationships and how they were different, but they came together. He also had a presentation for grades 4 and 5 that was rethinking Thanksgiving, and so he was able to address some of the misconceptions and misinformation about Thanksgiving, and he presented it from a Native American perspective, and it was a fantastic presentation. Our next presentations will be from a couple of exchange students that I have a personal connection with at the high school, and they're going to come down and do presentations just like me. So they'll talk to students about their history, their background, where they come from, but then the ending will be the connection of that. Have you ever played that game? You know, you say something, I love pizza, and everybody's just like me, right? So we're able to help students make those connections with kids who are not like them, but who they share a lot in common with. So that's what we are doing. We're also trying to celebrate the unique qualities and talents and individuality of our staff. So that's our work this year, DEI.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alex Ewing. I'm the building principal at Palmer Elementary. Like my colleagues have all spoken of, we're really invested in our school community. When looking at this goal, we wanted to address first and foremost that at the beginning of the year, we at Palmer conducted a fully inclusive family questionnaire sent out to our families just to gather information and try to inform us the best we possibly could about our school community. We had a tremendous response, over 300 students represented in commentary by their families, and the goal is really, again, to create the most kind of cohesive and responsive school community that we can. That information is shared specifically with classroom teachers as well as the rest of the school community, focuses on key people in student lives, languages spoken in the home, holidays and celebrations that families celebrate, as well as opportunity to talk about daily habits and routines with families, along with opportunity for parents to really share specific details about their children and how their children not only learn best but can be supported best as well. It has been tremendously helpful, I think, for families to have a voice with teachers, but also teachers be responsive to the students that we have in our school community. Ultimately, this is to develop awareness and sensitivity to the varying family dynamics within our school community, which we want to stay in tune with, and then ultimately to identify and inform our community of holidays or other observances that our school community find important in their own lives, and so that ultimately we can celebrate those groups within the school setting.
Good evening, everybody. I just want to say ditto. I just love hearing everybody, and I'm writing little notes. Oh, we did that too. Tom Coughlin, principal of Eldon Elementary School, and I'm very excited to be here to share some of the things that we're doing regarding our exemplified cultural responsiveness, diversity, and equity goal number 1A. Just like Palmer, we did do a survey with families at the night of our open house, so we could get feedback as quickly as possible with regard to our building in general, from safety to sense of belonging and etc. We were able to reach 257 students from 189 surveys that were completed by family members. We were it was very informative to get the year started off with regard to how the students are feeling. Do they have somebody, like Melissa said at Reynolds, check in, check out? Do they have somebody that they really feel safe that they can talk to if something wasn't just right? Another thing that we are extremely proud of, this is our 4th year with our multicultural crayon project. Each student gets a set of crayons at the beginning of the year that depicts skin colors. And that project may have been over with in September, beginning of October, but we can constantly refer back to that. It was all about diversity and how students are different and how we can have different activities incorporated into how we are different throughout the school day, throughout the week, throughout the month, if not the school year. Students have created self-portraits, and the book that they chose this year was called The Smallest Spot of a Dot, and basically it breaks it down to that we're all very similar when we talk about atoms and cells and so forth, but yet we're different on the outside and as well as the inside. And that can be referred to throughout the entire school year. Another thing that we are extremely proud of at Eldon Elementary is our family engagement nights. We have typically a great showing when we hold it at Eldon. We did bring back our River Knoll events on November 16th, and we started last year at this time. They would not let us in because of COVID, the residual effects of COVID. But this year they said we can use their clubhouse, and we had our first family engagement night, which has really been a huge success at Eldon over the years because it bridges the gap. Because time and time again we hear there may have been a bad experience from school, and parents don't really want to come to Eldon for various reasons, and this helps break that because we're coming to them, and our goal is to extend that and do something at the public library for maybe a village families and so forth. So we're very excited about that. And one of the things that I find refreshing, and our leadership team found that this is a continuation of a living, breathing document. It isn't necessarily something brand new that we're doing, but it was refreshing to hear that we're doing check-in, check-out just like Reynolds. We did a survey just like Palmer. We had Perry Ground just like at Van Buren, and we also got our high school mentors off and running with the help of Jennifer Medwick. So, thank you.
Okay, so our next goal is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, no, you're good. Are there any questions from the board related to this first goal? And then after that, we'll transition right to level 2.
I just want to say I really commend you for the DEI effort. I have, unfortunately, so far this year heard of 2 incidents of racial slurs in the upper grades, not anything in the elementary. So it's needed. It's very needed. But I also remember my daughter telling me that she always went to see her 2nd grade teacher every day before she went to class.
How many of the schools have high school mentors?
Right now, it's just Eldon, mainly
Right there,
because
yeah.
of convenience, but that
Transportation,
is
yeah.
something that other folks at the high school buildings that are looking at. So the next goal relates to project-based learning experiences and preparing students for that knowledgeable, critical thinking, communication, collaborators, creators, and contributors. So let's see how we kick us off.
So, in August, the district sent out a thought exchange to further define the definition of project-based learning versus problem-based learning. And with that, we were able to share those results of our staff meetings. All of us are in very similar spots. And we shared our results, and staff was offered opportunities on the November 7th PDC Day to learn some more about PBL. In addition to that, a couple of us had the opportunity to attend a training, an introductory training, where it's getting started for school leaders. It was very informative, and the overarching messages go slow and steady to make sure that this is something that you can sustain. I think for us, the next steps are that we will be following the district plan. The district has developed a PBL implementation plan, so that will be our next step. In addition to that, I know that we're really interested in getting some community businesses involved with our students, and also, I think that seeing what are we already doing in the elementary school. Are we doing any types of projects that are considered PBL or teaching? So, thank you.
And McNamara is in a very similar place. Just one thing to add, after we went over the thought exchange results, I just did a very high overview of what the implementation plan will be. And since then, I've had 2 full teams come and let me know that they want to pilot, and lots of individual teachers, including special area teachers. So I'm just very happy to see the excitement building. People are very interested in being part of that first cohort. So it's really nice to see we had people participate in that, in the overview on the PDC day as well.
So I think we're all in the same spot. We are all leading schools that have a staff that has a range of understanding about PBL. So we have folks that are that went to training several years ago, that became well versed in what PBL is, did not move to the implementation phase necessarily, and then we have other folks that know virtually nothing about PBL. So really, our first steps at Van Buren is to understand what is everyone's capacity, what does everyone know, what is our baseline of knowledge about PBL. So staff has started to compile, starting to think about, looking at the major characteristics of PBL, thinking about some of the projects, units, activities that they do that share characteristics with PBL, partly because helping staff understand that PBL is a heavy lift, but we're not that far away, that there are components of this that we're already doing. How do we bring it all together to make it a cohesive experience for students? So that's, again, it's like anything else, you're building staff capacity to be able to implement that. So they put together a preliminary list of the things that they're doing with students that might meet some of those criteria. The next step is also from that understanding, determine what type of professional development we need to move us to the next level.
So similarly at Palmer, we're in a very same place. A variety of, a range of knowledge levels as far as PBL is concerned. That being the case, to echo what some of my colleagues have talked about here, is just helping teachers not only understand the implementation plan that's been developed, but also, again, really reflect on the work that's currently being done in classrooms and how that work can be the springboard to a stronger kind of project-based learning approach. As planners, teachers are, they undoubtedly want to kick things off in a very positive fashion. I did have the opportunity with a couple of my friends here to participate in some of the PBL work that was offered on November 7th at the PDC Day. And I think our learning coaches did a fantastic job with that group. I think people are just really excited about the work. And ultimately, based on the presentations, it really is an engaging way for students to work with real world based problems. So I think the work is good. The work is heavy. But I think that from what we've gathered, teachers are ready to do that work with the training provided.
I concur with all of my colleagues. It's easiest to go last, I guess. But if you think about how children learn and how PBL was reintroduced to us as a district, it's really a great thing that we can appreciate that there are differences in the way each and every one of us learn. And our hope, and I'm sure everybody shares this, is that project-based learning can be a great foundation for students who don't learn maybe the typical way, that with addressing a problem and learning from that and doing things in a more thematic way. It's just another avenue for children to learn, and it really feeds into our whole DEI, the way children learn, because diversity isn't just about a student's skin color. Diversity can be very broad in the way students learn. And it's easy to say there's students that learn better than others, but with the right scaffolding, we can certainly meet the needs of all of our children. So we're really excited about the work ahead of us, and we're very happy.
So before we open it up for questions, I just want to remind the board too, after our last presentation, and also we placed in the front of the letter, just that 5-year implementation plan. It's important to emphasize that for us to be successful with project-based learning, it is a 5-year plan. This really is the pilot phase in year 1, leading into year 2. Year 3 is where we're looking at that full implementation. In 4 or 5, we're talking about sustainability, how we keep this moving forward, fresh, exciting, ever evolving, based on the experiences we've had. So just want to, that's why all of our buildings are in a similar place, but it's great to see that there is that excitement and energy around this, because we know it's important for kids.
This is just my ignorance, but in terms of curriculum, do you have a lot of curriculum guidance on what changes, or where does that come from? How do you make those decisions, or where does the curriculum guidance come from?
So, I think, when I think about PBL, you'll see a lot more flexibility, I think, at the elementary, middle school level. It's when you get into the upper levels that it's not necessarily, I don't want to say it's teacher resistance, but they're trying to figure out, how do I do this when I have to get my kids to the Regents exam, right?
Yeah.
So that's always not necessarily a deterrent, it's just a different way of thinking. I think for one of the things that I've noticed about PBL from at least the 10, 12 years ago, when it first kind of was brought to this region through OCM, BOCES, it was very structured, lots of support and time was put into the region, and then it kind of petered out when Dr. Craig left BOCES, and there really wasn't as much follow-up as I think he would have liked to have seen after he left the area. So getting back into it, I'm seeing that PBL's now talking with people. I attended the district leaders webinar. We've been in discussions with PBL Works about what's possible partnership look like directly between PBL Works and our district. And I can see that they've changed some of their thinking. It used to be, it has to be this, and this. And I think that was always, curriculum-wise, a real stumbling block for teachers, because there was just time, right? And they couldn't figure out how to get it, what they call the gold standard PBL unit. And so they shared with us last week, they called PBL, think of PBL like a dimmer switch, right? You can have it all the way up high, right, and get your gold standard unit. But then you can't always do that every unit, every day, for a whole year. So then you dim it a little bit so that you bring in, okay, here's a real world problem but we may not actually do a presentation to an authentic audience at the end, right? So if you have gold standard, you're doing all the pieces for that unit or for what you've planned. But sometimes the dimmer switch will bring it down so that it is more palatable and easier to bring to fruition in a classroom. So I see that they've changed as the years have gone by, and I think curriculum-wise, you can make it work. You don't have to have a specialized curriculum. It's training, it's time, it's support.
I think one of the other things that's important, and this is timely given the fact that the Blue Ribbon Commission, the New York State Education Department just published their 12 recommendations, narrowed down from 30 to some number. And when you think about, the flexibility in the creating state-developed rubrics to evaluate a student's performance instead of looking at a standardized traditional test like the Regents exam, CTE opportunities, internships, work-based learning opportunities, that all speaks PBL, right? So I think the timing of what we're looking to do and what the state education department is looking to do over the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, they're going to be in lockstep, which is, I think, important.
Can I just add, I think, I speak for all my colleagues as well, but the fact is that elementary teachers are tremendously creative people. And so that being the case, I mean, it's a really talented group that will figure out with time and training how to make things work. I mean, they always do. And so I'm very confident in the fact that they will be able to look at the things that they do on a daily basis and integrate, project-based learning as a meaningful experience for kids.
And just to add one more point, I think one of the things that was emphasized on the PDC day was that some of those curriculum decisions can be a little bit, made a little bit easier when you're collaborating. You have a whole team that's training and working together. So I'm trying to encourage teams to think about if that's something that they would like to do together, because when you're integrating a social studies unit into ELA, you kind of want to be on the same page as your team. So I think it's nice to see that some teams want to be together too.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. You touched briefly on different modes of teaching and learning, and I'm thinking, I'm just thinking in terms of for PBL planning and delivery, right? And I'm wondering how, if there's an approach yet. This question may be completely premature. It might be a year early. I don't know. But I'm wondering how you might distinguish your teaching methods between PBL and traditional sort of differentiated learning.
I think a lot of it is often student choice. When you're designing a PBL unit, you're usually creating a question or an end goal for students, but then there's a lot of choice embedded in that. So some students who might be more of the writing and reading type of learners would have options to do that type of learning within that unit, where you might have some hands-on students who take more of that approach. And then it's just creating rubrics and other assessment tools so that you can make sure you're still assessing the students no matter what choice they pick, but you're just embedding those different options, somewhat controlled options so that you're still getting towards the learning outcomes that you're looking for, but giving the students a choice is a big part of it too.
The only other piece that I would add too is think about, I see this more as that collaboration, right? So what you might experience in your place of employment, that we're seeing a lot more of that collaboration in a true PBL environment, more so than the structured collaboration that we have in our current instructional setting. So I see that as being a huge factor that as we make this transition, we'll see a difference within the interactions that our students have on a regular basis.
So Don, I would add to that, when I think about what your question is asking, is that, let's just say I'm asking my students to write a persuasive letter, right? So I give them a worksheet that says you need to have this, this, and this. Now write this persuasive letter. Persuade somebody that, you're the best, whatever. So in a PBL unit, that just naturally becomes a part of what the students have to do. And so it's not so much as, a structured conversation as much as, so who do you need to convince that this, if I want vending machines in the lunchroom, who do I need to convince? The kids will tell you, we gotta talk to the principal, or we have to talk to whoever, and so, well, let's write the principal, and they're like, I have a purpose and an audience to really want to get that information out. And so you're using that opportunity to guide the writing versus having it be a standalone kind of a piece of instruction. Does that make sense?
I have just one question, or actually one general question and then a more specific question. Thank you all for coming and presenting. And I'm not sure who to pose the question to. But specifically for the measures for this one goal, it talks at the very end about maintaining no less than 95% of students will meet the graduation requirement in 4 years. Maybe my naiveness, your elementary administrators. So how, when we use this measure, the students obviously aren't at that level yet of graduation. So why are we measuring, or how are we measuring it to make sure that project-based learning is incorporated into these graduation requirements?
So I think there's a combination. So the whole host of measures that are listed there are based on the strategic plan, and at that level, so we are preparing them, right? Engaging in project-based learning experience is going to have that positive effect on the graduation rates at the secondary level, but specifically at that level, they're looking at that continuous improvement in students at or above grade level in that universal screening. So as they're engaging in these project-based learning experiences, how is that impacting their overall universal benchmarking that we track 3 times over the course of the school year? As well as until the state does away with 3 through 8 assessments. I know we can't get rid of all of them because of federal mandates, but how are our students, if we're looking at that data too, performing in the PBL world as opposed to the pre-PBL experiences that our students have?
Thank you. And the other generalized question was measures for, I believe, all of the different goals is to develop a timeline for monitoring development and implementation. This one is problem-based learning. Is that, how are we going to get something annually to see where you are from year to year? So when you present next year, the timeline will be provided? Is that what, so one will be done annually? So
until we've accomplished our goal, the way I envision this is that we have the PBL implementation plan that was put together at the CIA level, that the principals are then taking and funneling down into their own building level teams. And so they're creating action steps based on that overall 5-year implementation plan that we shared with the board. So similar to what you see on the examples here, the things that are completed, you're going to see those in red. So you're going to see over the course of time, if we continue to utilize this strategic plan success planning guide, those updates and changes along the way. So you'll know what's been completed, and then we'll have updates provided with that specifically. So what does the timeline look for where we're at Palmer, as opposed to Reynolds, as opposed to overall district, that 30,000-foot lens of where we are in this process.
Thank you.
There are no other questions. We're going to move to our final goal, area of priority, which is increasing school safety and security.
So for as you know, Baldwinsville, we're far ahead of other districts, and that's just my opinion, but we have done so much to support this school safety for not only students, but staff as well. And as you know, supporting school safety ties into our social emotional learning curriculum. And throughout the years, we have been able to provide many more services in our school, along with Liberty Resources, which now Reynolds currently 2 weeks ago, has a full-time Liberty Resources worker, which has been a great addition. And that means that we can service that many more students that have been on that list. So we're meeting more of their needs. We met together as a leadership team over the summer and talked about this goal. And what we decided was, you know, a lot of students come into the building and they see these faces. And if they're not a teacher or a special area teacher, there's all these faces that they might not know. So we decided to do something fun where we did a couple TikToks for the kids, and the staff members introduced themselves. And the purpose was to, you know, who is this person? So for example, if it was the school police officer, where can you find him? If he's not in his office, he could be out front on the bus circle. At dismissal and arrival, he could be in the lunchroom. And what are some things that the SPO can help you with? And we thought that that was really helpful, and we're starting to notice now too that some of our students are asking to see more of those adults and the impact that they're making, and to see students, you know, saying hi to the SPO and noticing who the guidance counselor is, and because she might not be teaching those SEL lessons in their classroom until later on in the year. Now they know, you know, we are a community. And I think that's the most important thing. If our students and staff feel safe, then they can all learn. In addition to that, I thought the funnier one was the evacuation drill, because I remember when we first approached the topic, it was like, wow, how are we going to evacuate an entire school? And Alex was the one that, you know, he was brave and he went first, so I went over to observe. And it was perfect. And I'm like, oh, wow, how am I going to do this? But I have to tell you, I was super impressed. I see the value in it. And parents, there was not one parent that, you know, pushed back, and they recognize in this world, in this day and age, sending their kids to school, we have to prepare them, we have to keep them safe. And if we prepare them and do these drills and we don't make it a big, bad, scary thing, you know, it can be successful. So for us, I was excited to see this as one of our goals, because I think it ties into so many other pieces of learning.
At McNamara, we met with our building leadership team over the summer. We met together and reviewed this goal. And along with all of the security measures, we wanted to also focus on our playground safety. It just has seemed that in the past years, it's been a bit of an issue for our teachers during wellness time to supervise the students and make sure that, you know, we have no broken bones and things like that on the playground, and that students are using the equipment appropriately. So we have already created a list of rules and guidelines for the playground. It's for students, but then also for staff, so supervision guidelines that we agreed upon as a building leadership team. And our next steps will be to identify some of our more challenging playground equipment. We have 2 large playgrounds at McNamara, and students use both of those playgrounds. So when we have you know, kindergarten outside, it's just them, so they split in half and all students access both playgrounds. And so there are some pieces of equipment that can be a little bit more challenging for some of our younger students. And so what we've decided to do is make a list of what all of those pieces of equipment are, and then start to create videos for how to appropriately use that equipment. It's the safety piece, but then it's also how do we share when we're using this equipment, and just supporting in that social aspect too. So we want to work on those videos. We're going to have a subset of our building leadership team creating what those videos should look like and start filming them. Hopefully in the spring, we have to get through the winter weather. But then what we'd really love to do is have those videos accessible to our students through school, but then also put them on our website so they're accessible to families. A lot of families come and use our playground since we're really close to the neighborhood right near us. So we just want to have all of that accessible to everybody so that students can refer to that. And then each year, in the beginning of the year, teachers can refer to those videos as well. And we'll have the students be the actors in the videos, which is always engaging too. But then when we have a piece of playground equipment that for some reason students are beginning to have difficulty with, we can always refer back to the video and to the list of expectations as well.
I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna mention Jim's name, Officer Jim, quite a bit, because he has become quite a force at Van Buren. When he puts his hands on his hips, comes to me and he says, he wants me to fix something, or he's just gonna go ahead and get it fixed himself. So he's been a huge influence on our school in identifying the security weak points in our building and getting those addressed. Right, we've got those connecting doors, for example. Are they locked, unlocked? And so he checks them out. He has those conversations with staff. He visits with every single substitute teacher that's new to the building or in a new space in the building. He'll touch base with them first thing in the morning. These are our protocols. This is how it works. This is what you can expect. This is where I am. And the substitute teachers find that that's very reassuring for them, because that's a big question mark when they come into the school. And if there's a fire drill or an actual fire alarm, for example, in the moment they don't have that same experience, especially because they change rooms and locations to handle that. So I'll mention Jim's name a lot because he's an integral part of this. One of the things that we did this year is we reinstated safety patrol. That was something that went away during COVID. Safety patrol in the past was great. Kids loved the sense of responsibility. It was standing on the corner of a hallway saying, "Don't run." Jim's taken safety patrol to a new level this year. So I think of our 90-some-odd fifth graders, I think 70 students applied to be on it. So we have a rotating group. Jim trained them. He was very specific in what is your role and what is your responsibility, what are you looking for, how do you interact with the public. He had stationed kids outside of the buses and inside in the hallways. He trained them very well. In fact, he had them, when we rotated, he trained them to train the new safety patrol. So he had a couple of days of overlap where they were teaching each other. And kids have the answer. If whether we're talking about PBL or safety, students came to me and said, "Mrs. Cronin, you are not gonna believe what is happening." Kids are running in the hall. So the next step of that is they want to create safety videos so that they can reinforce all of those messages in school. But I have to tell you, the students seeing them and seeing them with that authority that they have now has been amazing. Students respect them. They look up to them. They're looking forward to eventually becoming safety patrol members themselves. I have students who haven't had their rotation yet. "Ms. Cronin, I'm gonna be next, I'm in the next one in safety patrol." So they're very, very excited about that. And of course, we love to see the students take that leadership role. So then I talked about student videos. They've identified the areas of need. One of them is running in the hallway. The other is jumping and hitting the signs. That's a thing. Like, you gotta jump. I don't. It's a thing. And so it's just. So they've identified the areas where they would like to inform the other students on how to be safe at school and in the hallway. Students today, our student council did an assembly, and they talked about kindness, and they demonstrated how a student interaction can become negative. It can become physically or verbally negative, and so they demonstrated what to do, and then we had a student walk across replay, and then they did it again. They acted it out in conflict and how we resolved it. So students are getting very good, not only through what they're seeing their peers do, but what they're learning in second step, which is something that we're doing across the board. All teachers are teaching all second step lessons, and students are learning how to deal with their big feelings and emotions. It's just great to see them taking on the responsibility themselves for their own safety. And of course, Jim and I will continue to do the work of keeping the building secure. Our families are very good about communicating with us when they see something that's a concern or an issue. Jim and I are going to participate in the threat assessment training. We're also, we both asked to participate in the Parkland presentation because that piece of it is very, very important to us as well. So in terms of data safety, we're giving a lot of the responsibility to our students to demonstrate their leadership.
I think, sorry to interrupt you, I think these videos would be hilarious if you did like a role reversal type thing. You had like the teacher running down the hall. and the kid would be like, no, running down the hall. Hey, I'm all for it. Or sitting on the swings the wrong way and falling into the wood chips, and then the kid comes over, don't do that. I think that'd be great.
So as discussed, I think this goal covers a lot of aspects of the school community. We at Palmer have also focused on, the really nuts and bolts security and safety pieces, but looking at the social emotional learning and social emotional well-being of students, we really tried to hone in on some of that work as well. Last week, we actually completed our thought exchange on student belonging at Palmer. We had 285 students participate in grades 2 through 5 for our initial gathering of information. Some of the comments about student belonging at Palmer are absolutely fascinating and beyond words. I can't even explain, the information that we've gotten. Overwhelmingly, the response was that students feel very connected and a strong sense of belonging at Palmer, which was what we had anticipated from seeing student faces. But it's nice to have in their own voices students explain why they do feel so connected. So some really great feedback as far as that's concerned. We've also started at Palmer some student targeted and focus groups developed to really support continual strengthening of social emotional skills. The addition of our school counselor has been a tremendous success at Palmer. She has really headed up a lot of this work, and students are being referred by their classroom teachers for these specialized and focused learning experiences. We continue to utilize McMahon Ryan for school-wide training just to address a variety of aspects of not only security and safety for students, but also social and emotional well-being. And then, as discussed, we have utilized our school resource officer as an instructional support just at the beginning of November, prior to us starting our lockdown drills. He made his way into all pre-K and K classrooms, read some texts that were supplied by the Sheriff's Department in anticipation of running those drills. And I'm happy to report after our first lockdown a couple weeks ago, at least the feedback from other law enforcement officials that came to help with our drill, that our pre-K and kindergarten students were more prepared than they'd ever seen. So it really does talk a lot about those school resource officers, not only being in the building, but also them working directly with students to prepare them for the situations that they may face. So Keith Lawrence has been an absolute asset to our school community.
I concur with everything that my colleagues have mentioned. So I'll start with our SPO. He has been extremely visible throughout the entire building from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. He is part of the family. He gives us pertinent and important feedback with regard to all of our drills and how we can improve, whether it's timing or if a door wasn't locked. It's just, we're way ahead of the game. I know one of my colleagues had mentioned further along than other elementary or other districts around the area. It gives you a sense of relief if somebody's coming to have a meeting. Just having him in the building is I can speak for just about everybody on staff, puts a little bit of ease at the start of the day, just knowing that Officer Marty is there. It has been awesome. And I had the pleasure of working with him for 3 years at Baker High School, so it was really no assimilation whatsoever. I think it was, at least for me, For him, on the other hand, was a little bit different going from high school down to the elementary kiddos, but he's right there, very visible, and that in and of itself is remarkable, just to have, you know, that, like bridging a gap. Kids are not afraid in terms of, it's like officer friendly for those of you that are old like me. It's been amazing. He helped us and was a tremendous asset when we did our evacuation drill. It ran extremely smoothly, and thanks to Alex for saying pair them up, so it's not like 500 kids in a single file line. It was so much easier. So it's quite nice to be able to share with my colleagues different things that work and little misconceptions and look-fors. Another thing that I wanted to mention is I heard the school counselor. Last year we had a full-time school counselor added, and we have a new social worker this year. So our student services team is really solid, and we're very excited to help students with regard to safety and so forth. Over the summer that we worked with we call it the 3Bs and restorative practices team, to really dig deep into what can we put into our students' hands to really get their input. So we, as some of the other schools had mentioned, decided to create safety videos. Our first one was filmed today in collaboration with Mike Tierney. We had 2 bus drivers come over, and this month's highlight for November is the bus. And we have 2 representatives from every class, pre-K to 5th grade, that are ambassadors for our 3Bs, because without being safe, you really can't be respectful and responsible. That's like very crucial, and it's like our mantra. So today was the first video, and they knocked it out of the park. They did a fabulous job, filmed it right on the bus. I just took a back seat and let Mrs. Wolkin, one of our teachers on the team, lead, and it was amazing. The kids were very, very well involved and just excited. And they actually had to misbehave on the bus because they were given a cue. And how do you respond? And you wait for the bus driver. It just quite amazing. So this is something, like we've mentioned before, like a living, breathing document. This increasing school safety and security is definitely on the front burner in all of our minds. So it's a pleasure to work with our students to get their input so we can make it a better place. So
just a couple of comments before we open it up for questions on this goal. So when you think about the larger long-term goals that we have with our board goals, district goals, think about the things that they've described here this evening, specifically to safety and security. So when you think about increasing the SRO, SRPO, we've talked about that. We have an additional person hopefully starting here within the next, by the new year, through the Baldwinsville Police Department. Those ongoing safety drills and trainings, yes, we've done lockdown drills, yes, we've done sheltering drills, but the evacuation drills and some of the things that we're doing, every building, the videos that they've described, when you think about how are we communicating to our stakeholders about the general safety procedures. So every family gets a communication when the buildings go into a lockdown or engage in a safety drill, explaining what's going on, and then these videos that are being also shared out with families, so they know step by step what their kids are ultimately experiencing. So I think those are a couple other long-term action steps that we've identified this year specifically through the work at the buildings and across the district. Then we also think about the community cafe and that opportunity for people to have dialogue specifically about safety and security. And our social workers, it was highlighted here, and it was highlighted in the sense of belonging goal, our first goal, that our social workers, our psychologists, our student support teams within each building are reaching out, they're contacting families, they're having conversations, they're letting them know what mental health and social emotional supports are available for our students and their families, because I think that's the other piece that they go above and beyond, making sure that families know what resources are available as well. And that's needed, obviously. So a couple things that hopefully bring it all together. Questions for the group?
I have a question. One, I love hearing about elementary kids because they're like sponges and they soak everything up. In this one particular goal, so much emphasis is being used, or excuse me, on with the SROs and the SPOs, and they're really taking the role of helping out additionally with safety and what to do, what not to do. So it kind of relates to my question as to one of the measures is decreasing or seeing if it's decreasing the number of disciplinary referrals. And since you've involved having the kids in these videos, what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing, and I know we've just passed the 10-week mark. Have any of you noticed that some of those referrals that you may have received before about running in the hall that you continuously tell them not to do, is anything like that? Have they decreased, or have you looked that far into it?
I don't know that those things are specifically addressed through our SROs. I would say our SRO, I can speak to my SRO at Palmer. As Tom spoke, he is a tremendously positive and new addition to our community. But I really think that if you're looking at student behavior and potential, disciplinary situations, I mean, that's really a school community-based approach. So, I mean, I would not say, and we've not had our SROs specifically involved with student disciplinary situations.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean have them involved in it. I meant they're incorporating these, like helping out with the videos, or Cindy, like with the student, we used to call it security, safety patrol. Just the overall engagement with the kids, if you're seeing a difference. Not them specifically engaging in disciplinary.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No,
I would say that they have, at Palmer, our SRO has had a tremendous impact on the school community. It's just another trusted adult in the building that students see as someone that's going to hold them accountable, and again, not only create a relationship with them, but also set an expectation for just general appropriate behavior in the building.
So I would just add just in general, I think, when you build that school culture and community, there's that positive experience that students have. They tend to get in less trouble. I think overall we have the data. Danielle has updated the dashboard. We do have the information on, I believe, slide 10 for the district report card on where we are with offenses. Just in general, I think one of the things that's important to also point out is, remember, we had a reset, right, this year, because we did a lot of training this summer and what gets documented and what doesn't get documented, and how we kind of track all of the work, and that was led by our legal counsel and helping us make sure that we're reporting appropriately. So I think there's been a shift in the way that we're reporting. I think we're documenting more than we have in prior years. But when I look at the data, it also shows, just real quickly, at the elementary level specifically, that there is not a significant change when it comes to the dispositions, or there is a change compared to 22-23. So when you look at the number of warnings and in-school suspensions, I mean, you see all that on the dashboard. We can highlight that for each level. So I think, in isolation, just through conversation and qualitative, data, I think students seem to be in a better place than they have been in prior years. I'd like to attribute it to all this that's going on, but certainly there's been a reset that I think we can't ignore. But as the course of the school year, we move throughout. I mean, you're going to be able to see marking period by marking period, and then we'll also have that change compared to 22-23. I will say we are also down I just don't want to jinx it.
Don't say it.
I'm not gonna say it, but
Stop while you're
the
ahead.
major offenses and things like that, we're in a much better place than we were last year. And I do think we're being a little bit more black and white when it comes to the rules and the reporting because we have to. So take that for what it's worth.
So I think just philosophically, when we think about referrals, I think there's a tendency to look at them as a record of bad behavior. If you can flip your thinking to a referral is a documentation of social and behavioral learning that students need to work on, or that we need to work on with students, then because they're kids, they're doing things that they're not sure of. They're impulsive, and that is a part of their learning too. And I see a referral documenting it or not, that behavior is an opportunity to help the student evolve socially and emotionally, and that's how we approach it.
Thanks for sharing that, Cindy, because that is important, and I think sometimes, sometimes I may lose sight of that, because you hear a referral and you think, oh, discipline, but you're using it as a learning tool, so thank you.
Any other
Thank you for
questions?
coming tonight, presenting. I think the thing that we noticed the most was the collaboration between all of you. And then you're all supporting each other, and you're all supporting the students, and you're really focusing on student leadership and centering all the objectives and the action steps on students, and making them a part of the decisions and the involvement. So it's great to see. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. It really is very evident that you guys work closely together in regards to it, and it's very important, so thank you very much.
There are no other questions. You guys are free to leave. We have another item on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Have a nice holiday.
Thank you as well.
So while they're heading out, the next item that we had listed under discussion for the work session is just the roundtable procedures. I know we had a board member that requested this review to be placed on the agenda, so certainly open up for discussion.
Open for the roundtable procedure.
Thank you. I did send an email asking if we could put this back on the agenda for tonight to speak to. And the reason I requested that, I wrote some notes, so it makes no sense. During our October 16th meeting, we discussed procedures for the board roundtable. And I went back to it and listened to it numerous times. I'm also requesting it because I was denied the opportunity to speak during roundtable at our last Board of Education meeting on the 6th. During the roundtable, I started to ask a question that was denied. Victor, you indicated that I could not ask a question that wasn't previously submitted for the meeting. I knew it wasn't accurate, and during our discussion back on 10/16, we agreed that questions could be asked even if they weren't submitted ahead of time, because there's a lag in time and things come up. Also, there was some conversation, I think Joe had indicated, that how the board roundtable topic came up and how it was going to be presented at each meeting. So I went back and I too listened to that meeting, and there was no specific time limit, nothing specifically indicating time limit for board roundtable. That it's evolving, it's a new process, procedure, could go from 1 minute to 2 hours. So I think we need to make sure that we're clear on what we decided in the past. I'm, an elected official that represents the community, and I wasn't able to ask questions. So can we have a conversation? Because I was denied, I wasn't able to do it because I was doing it incorrectly, and I was not correct.
let me clarify a little bit. I think you were able to ask a question that was agenda. So,
Yes, and then I had an additional question. I had additional questions that came up between
So-
agenda planning and then the meeting.
you
And I
already
can-
stated that.
Yes.
Okay, I guess we'll open the floor for anybody else's comments on their understanding and what they think is proper.
So I'm gonna ask a quick question. I don't think, I'm just guessing, this is just my impression, but I don't think that the school board has been without standards for meeting procedures in the past. And my guess is that this is somehow, usually is based on Robert's Rules of Order in some way. I don't know how it's been, I'm one of the new guys, so I don't know how it's been pursued in the past. But so just my experience elsewhere is I'm very, very accustomed to Robert's Rules. And so, and that's a very structured thing. It's, when it's done well, there's very, very free-flowing conversation, but it's also very, very structured, and it's designed, it's meant to keep everyone focused on a particular topic. One of the things that you'll hear in a meeting that's being pursued by Robert's Rules is, someone sort of starts discussing something, and some member of the body will say, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, Mr. President, it's not germane, or they'll raise a point of privilege, like, germaneness, meaning identify specifically how is this germane to the question that's on the floor. And so that's been my experience, and again, we can sort of pursue this any way we want. We're the board. But I'm not opposed to some sort of structure for the way we pursue things.
Okay. Andrew?
Thanks.
Don, this is Christy Pavetto. I don't know if you guys can hear me okay?
We can, Christy. You want to go ahead?
Okay, great. I just wanted to piggyback on, what Don is saying, and I do agree that we probably need to utilize something like Robert's Rules, and have some structure around the board roundtable. I think it's hard for the board members to react to items that are brought up without any pre notice. It's hard to be able to think about a topic and think about how you feel about it, what you might want to say, questions you might want to ask. And so I would be in favor of providing some structure around the board roundtable so that at least we could know what's going to be discussed and do some thinking about it with regard to questions we want to ask or areas we want to explore in advance of the meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Christy. Andrew?
I'm sure all of you got my email on something in reference to Robert's Rules of Order and parliamentary procedure. One of the things that I have felt over the last 120 days is that we have not done a really good job as a board of doing what we're supposed to do and following Robert's Rules of Order. 99% of the school boards in New York State do follow that. They do follow parliamentary procedures. They should address our president, Mr. President. There should be no banter back and forth. Each of us should have an opportunity to speak on whatever is brought up. And from then, we can go around again if we have to. And then it's up to our president to ask if there's a consensus. And if there is, that's the end of it. And we don't do a really good job of that. And that's why I sent out the email that I sent out. And if somebody hasn't seen Robert's Rules of Order, it's really easy. If you don't have the book, and I apologize, I don't know who has the book and who doesn't have the book, I know I got it when I got on the board, so I assume that everybody got it, and maybe that's not true. But you can get online, you can look at it, and it's really simple, as Don said. If we do that, it shows, it'll give us enough time to respect each other's comments without jumping on each other and taking shots at each other. I feel that late emails coming at the last hour, the last minute, asking for whatever it might be, is not what we're about. I think we have to do a better job of preparing to get to where we have to be, whether it's an agenda planning meeting, whether it's a board meeting. And if we can do that, I think we're going to function at a higher quality as a board.
I agree with pretty much what everybody's saying, and kind of being a policy guy. We have a couple policies here at the board, 1321, that is right in line with Robert's rules with the president conducting business and enforcing such orderly conduct. But the biggest thing too is the 1510, where board members will submit to place matters on the agenda for board leadership, and I think, or through board leadership, excuse me, and I think that's important for what Christina said, is it gives people an opportunity to react to a question or be able to have a fruitful discussion if said question is brought up, so we're not either in the dark or trying to figure it out during actual business. So also the NSBA recommends parliamentary rules and really cites that quite a bit within that text, and I think the adoption of Robert's rules is probably the most effective for us, and obviously to stick to it so that we're organized, productive, as well as give everyone the opportunity to address the question on the floor.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Dan?
I really like the idea of having roundtable items on the agenda prior. That way, if we have a question or want to research something individually or as a group, we have time to do that. If it just comes up sometimes, we're sitting there staring at each other. We may not have the data, we may not have any answers, and we can move forward as a group.
Okay, other discussion at this time?
Maybe
Shelley?
I'll speak to that.
Yep.
I have no problems with following Robert's rules. But I think for me, what's been difficult is we have a brand new board, and what was done in the past, we've never set up any norms or guidelines for how we are going to interact and work as a board. We did have in policy, I think it was 1321, previously, it was noted in that policy that we would abide by Robert's rules. But nowhere in our policy does it say that we have to abide by those. Also, in reflecting back, the years that I have been on the board, it was, I don't want to say it was a little more lax in how we communicated, how we got information out. And I understand with each new year, things change. So I have no problem with that, but we all need to make sure that that's what we're doing going forward. And I bring that up again because we did discuss, when we first spoke about the procedure of roundtable, I think it was Tanya who also reiterated at the very end, because I watched it again today, that if questions come up after the agenda planning period, and prior to the meeting or at the time of the meeting, the question would be able to be asked. If time allotted, then it could be answered if whoever the question was steered toward, they had that ability to answer. And or if at the time-wise it was getting too long, that it would be put on to the next agenda. And my whole point was I was not given that opportunity to even ask my additional questions. And we have to wait another whole month now to bring up those questions, which primarily are community driven. So I have no problem with doing that, but we need to stick with what we agreed to. And we agreed that if questions came up that weren't already on the agenda, they would be allowed.
Okay, I think I'm hearing a lot of discussion, and I believe my understanding was, well, I don't believe, I know, my understanding was, is that everybody would give the courtesy of agenda iteming anything they're gonna bring up in roundtable. And that has been previously noted, certainly gives people an opportunity to look at it, to research it if they need to, and to, understand what the question was. So at this time, I would entertain a motion, one way or another, to what we want to do.
Can I interject? Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not understanding.
I'm sorry. You were gonna make a motion, I think.
I was gonna-
You're gonna.
I don't think we can make a motion. This isn't a meeting that we can,
True.
do a
We
vote
just
at.
did a
It's-
consent. Oh, thank you.
It comes to consensus.
Thank you, thank you.
And I think that would be
Yeah.
beneficial,
Yeah,
unless
thank you.
somebody else wants to speak towards that, we have to go around the table.
You're right, we cannot take action.
So then, just to kind of clarify, then, and sorry if I interrupted anybody. If something comes up, or if there's a question that we think of during the board meeting, should we send that in an email the next day? Or how would we go in regards to, I guess, discussing those topics? Would it be the same procedure type thing, or what would we do?
Well, if it's something under discussion, if it's a motion you're discussing, you discuss it. Roundtable is for bringing up items that were not agended otherwise, so that everybody has an equal opportunity to bring forth an item. But if you're gonna give people a chance to be responsive to that, it needs to be on the roundtable agenda. And that was the purpose of that. In my mind, if you're gonna allow late additions to the roundtable, there's no sense in agenda item, in putting anything on the agenda, right? It's all just hit and miss.
So, point of
So
information.
the idea was to do that so that people would have the knowledge of what was gonna be discussed at the roundtable, with the research they wanted to bring.
Yeah, point of information, just, in terms, there's different versions very quickly, just to set aside. We do this work with our Puerto Rican Hispanic Youth Leadership Institute, where we teach parliamentary procedures in the legislative chambers at the state level. There is an abbreviated version, and I'm sorry I didn't bring them for you. We do provide it to our students, and there is the lengthy one that Mr. Henty speaks to. I guess my wondering is, in terms of question, I guess I think about urgency, right? There are things that do come up that we need to address that are placed on the agenda. I guess, what is the protocol if something comes up? In between the time of the agenda planning or afterwards, up to leading to the board meeting, what is that process and protocol? And if there is urgency, if there is a situation, if there is a crisis, how is the board to handle that? Thank you.
I believe if there's a crisis, we'll be holding a meeting for that crisis. No different than anything else.
I think it depends on what the definition of what crisis is, but I just want to reiterate, everyone needs to listen to the October 16th meeting, because we all came to a consensus that if items or a topic came up after agenda planning, opportunity would be given to the individual to bring up that question or concern. It would be answered, if able to be answered to. If not, it would be addressed at the next meeting. So, I guess if we don't agree to that, well, I guess we can't hold truth to anything that we do in previous meetings.
Opinion, I believe that was.
No, it's
Okay,
fact.
Looking for.
It's fact.
Shelley, you're out of order, sorry. So, looking for consensus, the agreement I believe we had was that we would agenda anything for roundtable, and that would be submitted prior to agenda planning. So it would be placed on the agenda under the roundtable.
So-
Anyone can put anything in, but that was the agreement.
So, point of information, so to Shelley's point, I think your assessment of what we had collectively agreed upon after doing that, I agree. I guess my wondering once again is, are we now applying Robert's Ruler's order at this point? Because you just called her out of order. I'm just wondering,
is this a reflection of the changes based on previous behavior of what's happened here? I'm sorry I came in later, I'm just confused about the application of Robert's Rule at this point because it was very absent in previous meetings. When, in very public spaces, I'm sorry, respectfully, Ms. Geckel was treated inappropriately by members of this board. So I just, is this sort of a reflection, stepping back, saying we need to make some changes because we messed up? And I know we messed up, and acknowledging that, and then taking steps collectively as a board to follow these so we can follow it with a level of fidelity so we're putting in place. Just wanted to get some sense of that because now you're saying point of order, and that was very absent, President Jenkins, in previous sessions when Ms. Geckel respectfully was treated inappropriately. Thank you.
Okay, we'll proceed to get a consensus because I think we've always followed Robert's Rules of Order. So I'm asking for everybody who believes that items should be agended for roundtable to raise their hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and Christie's got her hand up. Thank you, Christie. So it's 7, and anyone thinks it's not necessary?
I don't think it's not necessary. It's not I mean, once again, you start a false narrative without point of order. Just concerned about the language you're using, President Jenkins. This is not about necessary. It's about clarity about how we're going to move forward. If the decision right now is we can only present agenda items on, and that's it, we leave it at, without clarity about what to do afterwards, then right now, there's not enough clarity about procedures or practices as a board. But to use the language that you do creates false narratives and perception that we don't care about the process. And it's not welcomed here.
Okay, so I think we have a solid consensus that we will ask that all those items be agended. And I think that's the end of our roundtable at this point.
May I interject? I wasn't finished speaking. I was gonna ask to play the October 16th meeting because you will clearly hear what was agreed to. So now we're saying that everything that we agreed to in the past is, not gonna abide by it now. I understand what Robert's Rule of Law, our rules are. I don't have a book, I look it up online. We've never said we're going to do it per this. I just think there needs to be clarity, there needs to be understanding of what Robert's rules are. If we're supposed to address you as Mr. President, I certainly will. That has never come up before. But my point is, we agreed on the October 16th meeting that people would be able to speak if they weren't on the agenda. So I urge everyone to look at that October 16th meeting, and I think it starts at 53 minutes in. And if you still, I don't know how to get past this. We've had no formal work sessions to say, this is how we are going to run the meetings. This is how we're supposed to be responding. And every meeting, something comes up, and then we're like, we're gonna do this. And I feel like I am being silenced.
Don, go ahead.
It sounds to me, and I may be misinterpreting my colleague's bit of information there, it sounds to me like perhaps we have a policy on this, that we're supposed to be following Robert's Rules of Order. And if we do have a policy on that, the way that a member is permitted to both begin and finish speaking is to have control of the floor. When I put my name on the speaker's list, I was recognized by the chair or the president or whatever, the title doesn't matter. Got running the meeting. Right now, I have possession of the floor. No one can take it. I can sit here and talk for hours if I like, as long as what I'm talking about is germane. And I'm not attempting to address any specific question that was put forth. I think that's a matter for the chair. But there are ways, easy, well-known, trying to be facetious for centuries, ways of running meetings that are very cordial and very productive and very focused. And I don't see any harm in asking this board to professionalize a little bit. I think that some of the results that this board has achieved over the last 5, 6, 7 years may be a result of a little bit of camaraderie, a little bit of familiarity, a little bit of a lack of structure. And most of us here are new, so I'm not actually chastising anyone at the table. And I wouldn't, even if there were older, more tenured members here. I think that the way that policy reads, and I would perhaps request from either the chair or the parliamentarian outside of the meeting for clarification of that policy. If we've got it in policy, we probably ought to follow it.
Yeah, point of order, just for the record, can we just have on the record that, board members, Mr. Miller's, I'm sorry, comments or an opinion, please, about making reference to the actions in previous boards before. Just can we have that on the record, please? Thank you.
Andrew?
I think Don has a very good point, and that's really why I sent the email out, is I think we have been lax as a board on following the policies that we need to follow. And it's happening again tonight. We're not giving the entire board a chance to talk before somebody else speaks, after somebody speaks. And if we're gonna function at the level that we need to function at, then we need to have those policies in place. We can't get things at the last minute. We can't have the leadership addressed without all the leadership addressed emails. I think when you look at what Luke did, and you looked at our policy 1321, it is in place. Have we followed it to the degree that we should have? No. But because of what has gone on over the last few months, that's what spurred me to send an email. And I think if we can come to a consensus as a board that we should follow this, then it'll help us all down the road. And then we all have to be mindful of each other. So if one member speaks, then we have to wait until we give the other entire board a chance to speak. And then that member who spoke may have a chance to speak again. That'll be up to Mr. President. That will not be up to anybody else. But we cannot have our banter that's been going back and forth for over the last few months.
Point of information.
I think at this time, I'm going to make a statement, then we'll adjourn. I don't believe people who are making contributions to the discussion and goals and furtherance of board agendas are ever shut out. I do think some of the dialogue that's happened in the past has been more of a gotcha dialogue, an unnecessary attention or questioning of detail that could be outside the board's purview. And we are attempting, as board leadership, to move things forward in a procedural manner. I'm surprised that anybody thinks they need to be reminded that Robert's Rules of Order are used. It's customary in most all school boards, and any good attention to that process should be adhered to. So I just urge everyone to come together and try to keep the kids first and keep your lane of board leadership, or keep your lane of board process in line, and do what's best for the board and the community and the school. And with that, I will ask for a motion.
Point of order,
for
please.
adjournment.
Point of order, please. I'm just,
Go ahead.
thank you, President Jenkins. I'm just concerned about some of the language you're using, sir. The procedures for Robert's Rules was to encourage democratic dialogue. And the language I'm hearing from you, sir, respectfully, is to limit that. And from a as a democracy, you don't have that right. And I think before we start implementing, there needs to be a level of training of the leadership to be able to execute these Robert Rules, which I totally agree. We teach it to our students in the programs that we lead in other areas. There needs to be some capacity building, because quite respectfully, I don't trust. I know that Mr. Miller, Board Member Miller, has a level of experience and expertise because his role in the legislator in that type of body. I'm not as confident with you, Mr. Jenkins, respectfully, and we need to build some capacity to that. And if we're not willing to do that collectively, before making a decision, and I think we should apply Robert's Rule, but it's not to hinder dialogue, it's to encourage it in this space. Thank you.
Resolved that the November 20th, 2023 Board of Education work session be adjourned.
So moved.
Don?
Second.
Andrew?
No question.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.